She's bold, she's red, and she's waiting. And if you guessed that we'd be weathering this sassy red thing right here, you're right. Today we'll be putting to the test the AK Interactive Generation 3 paint. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Jacob Richards, and I'll be walking you through this weathering test of the new AK Interactive Generation 3 paints using my Warlord Games Moss Super Tank. Today's testing will cover chipping and weathering effects using oils and enamel products. Let's jump in. Now the first test I want to conduct with this new paint was see just how well it could chip. A little disclaimer, I typically don't use any sort of fluid, like in this case the Worn Effects fluid by AK, or say hairspray to create any sort of chipping effect. I normally will use a brush or a sponge. But I want to see how well this stuff chips, so I applied some putty to the tank, and then went about applying 2 thin layers of the Worn Effects by AK. Once the Worn Effects fluid was dry, I went about applying the tan color over the tank. I applied 2 thin, even layers of paint and then waited for that to dry, giving it only maybe about 10-20 minutes for it to fully cure on top of the chipping fluid. Once the paint was dry, I removed the putty, and you can see here there was no lifting of the paint due to the putty's removal. Now came the moment of truth. I took a dampened brush and started working the chipping fluid underneath the newly applied paint. Now, you'll see me make some pretty big errors, like the really large chip you see popping up there where my brush was at, but that's due to my inexperience of using a lot of chipping fluid. However, as time went on, I was able to create nice scale-sized chips using the Worn Effects chipping fluid by AK. Despite getting some pretty solid results using a brush and the scraper tool I used later on, I would say that the chipping effects, or the chipping capabilities of this paint is good, but not as good as, say, something as a real color paint or Tamiya paint. Tamiya paints and real color paints are not acrylic paint. Acrylic paints tend to be very elastic and have a harder time actually being chipped because they are so elastic and tend to peel off the model. And here you can see I made a little bit of a mistake. I accidentally applied isopropyl alcohol from my mixing jar and put it on the tank rather than using my water. No matter what you do, isopropyl alcohol will annihilate any kind of paint out there, but overall, the chipping effects with the AK Interactive Generation 3 paint did a pretty good job. Again, not as good as AK Real Colors, but pretty good. Typically at this point of any sort of build or paint job in this case, I would apply a clear coat over the acrylic paint I had just put down. But as I want to test the ability or the durability of this paint, I went simply from applying my acrylics to applying a filter, which is an enamel-based product, to see just how well this stuff will stick up to it. I did a good job of applying nice light coats of the filter all over the model, followed by some thinner to clean it up, and I was not disappointed. No running of the acrylic paint took place. The application of oils presents a unique problem for an acrylic paint, because not only does the oil paint and the thinner you're using can actually cause a very harsh reaction to the acrylic paint, you're using a little bit of friction to spread the oil around, which could actually loosen and deteriorate the acrylic paint underneath. Now, as I went about creating nice streaking effects and then blending the paint later on, the oil paint that is, over the acrylic paint, I was very surprised not to see any bleeding take place, no matter how hard I pushed on the oil paints to blend them. And I was very impressed. No bleeding took place, no removal of the acrylic paint took place at all. Now, in my opinion, applying washes can be very harsh on acrylic paint. For this case, I used Wilder's Nitroline paint to create the different pin washes and panel lining along the turret with moss. Typically when I use a wash, I use a lot of thinner in it because that increases the capillary action and allows the pigments to flow around different details and go in different panel lines when I'm doing this process. However, this process can be very harmful to acrylic paint, which causes it to actually get demolished. As I went along, I didn't see any of the acrylic paint breaking down, especially when we went back with a clean brush with thinner to start cleaning up any sort of overflow or mess that I left behind with the wash. No matter how hard I scrubbed or how much I did clean up, none of the acrylic paint that was applied came up, whether that be the red paint or the tan paint I applied earlier. Alright, time for some closing thoughts. These paints, being acrylic, they do a decent job at chipping, however not as nice as, say, aka real color paints do. However, that being said, these paints are incredibly durable and did a great job lasting up against the different products I was using to weather them. Overall, these are great paints, they're solid, and I highly recommend getting them. That's all for today. Stay safe and have a great one.